Gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Paulsen, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to follow up a little bit on the discussion about research and development just for a second, because I think you identified how your companies, your membership in your companies as a part of the testimony, it's such an important component of jobs here, of economic development. And I just want to expand on it. Can you just share some thoughts about why that is so important? I do understand, working with the med tech industry in particular, that the incentives to attract research and development are much stronger in other countries than they actually are here in the United States. What actually happens? What actually happens when R&D is actually conducted here in the United States? What types of jobs are we talking about? Whether it's in the food industry, whether it's in med tech or other membership companies. But can you maybe just elaborate a little bit, Ms. McClernand?
Yes, absolutely. Our companies produce about 14% of private sector R&D, so it is an important part of what we do here, and we contribute a lot to the U.S. R&D base. Much of the reason that our companies do R&D here, I think we've talked on, is the quality of the workforce. It's also access to universities. But these are high-end jobs. Because we create 14% of research and development, it leads back to the fact that our companies pay 30% higher than average company. And this is because it conveys the higher level, high skill nature job that these companies tend to support in scientists and engineers. And so I would say that research and development, when it happens here, especially with using American scientists and engineers, the U.S. economy benefits. I think many countries around the world, including the U.S., are actively trying to recruit that R&D, and the U.S. has done a pretty good job considering other countries are actively working in this area.
Yeah. So it's safe to say, and Mr. Spitzer, Mr. Dodd, please comment too, but it's safe to say to me where the innovation starts, where it occurs, is where you're going to have this sort of the supply chain, if you will, of other follow-up progression of other jobs.
There's certainly a multiplier effect, if you will, of R&D investment. Absolutely.
Mr. DeBoer, I'm just going to change themes here real quick before my time runs out. But Mr. DeBoer, you talked about modifying FERPTA as a part of your testimony to encourage greater foreign direct investment in U.S. commercial real estate space here in the United States. And I think when a lot of people think of commercial real estate, they think of Washington, D.C., they think of New York, they think of kind of the big commercial real estate spaces. But how would the modification of some of the proposals you're offering or proposing, how would that help Midwestern community banks? Because you sort of alluded to that. I caught that in your testimony also. But how does that help Midwestern community banks in Minnesota, as an example, get more access to credit for small businesses?
Thank you for the question, because I think a lot of people are confused about how this would benefit markets outside of New York or Washington or San Francisco, which are actually doing reasonably well. It goes to what I was talking about before. Investors want capital gain. They want to invest in areas where they can see those values come back. As you know, there's been some value decline across the country. Certain markets are hit more hard than other markets. These are areas that need tremendous amounts of equity. These owners have been essentially hanging on now since 06, 07 time period. They've been funding the debt service out of their own pockets, out of their own equity. The jobs have not come back. The loans need to be balanced. There's a tremendous amount of these loans that are held by community banks. Rebalancing these loans will help ease the pressure on the community banks, point number one, which will allow the banks to then be able to lend more of their capital and devote more of their attention to providing small business loans to American small businesses to create jobs. So helping ease that side of the balance sheet for community banks would be very, very helpful. Then you look at the real estate itself. A lot of these assets have had deferred maintenance on them. In other words, they're starting to run down. People are running out of capital. They can't, tenant them up and put them in the transaction stream and keep their values up. If they can get capital put into them, construction workers will go back to work, and architectural firms will go back to work, and transactions will occur, so transfer taxes can occur and help communities. In particular, part two of what I talked about, the notice, the IRS notice This is a situation that would directly help smaller communities as opposed to larger cities in attracting investment. That's where foreign capital wants to partner with local owners to recapitalize, reposition these assets. That would be very, very helpful in smaller markets, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.